Hello, everyone out in the internet. We're going to continue reading from Futuring, The Exploration of the Future by Edward Cornish. We're on chapter 3, and let's get it going for you. 6 super trends shaping the future. To understand the great transformation, we must simplify it. Otherwise, we become lost in the sheer complexity of the phenomenon. Simplification means that we must decide which are the very most important trends or currents of change in the great transformation and then focus our attention on them, at least until we get a better understanding of what's happening. In the last chapter, we identified technological progress as the main engine driving the rapid cultural evolution that we are now experiencing. In past times, environmental changes or something else may have played a more important role in driving cultural evolution, but today, technological progress seems to be the primary force for change. Technological progress is the first super trend we will consider. It encompasses many lesser trends, such as incremental improvements in computers, materials, biotechnology, nanotechnology, and hundreds of other technological specialties. But technological progress is more than a super trend. It is also a super force, in that it creates massive change, including other super trends, which are powerful instruments of change in their own right. The most obvious super trend produced by technological progress is economic growth. Better technologies make it possible to produce cheaper and better goods and services. Since people want these goods and services and are willing to devote their time and energy in getting them, technological progress becomes an engine for economic progress, which has been so massive over the past 2 centuries that it qualifies as a second super trend. In combination, these 2 super trends, technological progress and economic growth, have driven an astounding amount of change in human society. Today, techno-economic growth is producing change even faster than in the past, and the resulting changes come in many different forms. However, 4 shifts wrought by techno-economic growth merit special attention because they exert such a powerful influence that we can think of them, too, as both super trends and super forces. They are trends because they are currents of change, and forces because they cause so many other changes. These 4 super trends are improving human health, increasing mobility, environmental decline, and increasing deculturation. In identifying these shifts as critically important, we are viewing the world from a global long-term perspective. At various places and various times, these cultural supertrends may actually reverse their course, and today they may be operating faster or slower depending on the region one considers. For example, health has declined in recent years in both Africa and Eastern Europe, though on the global basis it continues to improve. We now have a total of 6 supertrends to use as tools for understanding the Great Transformation. Each qualifies as a supertrend because it summarizes a key category of change and acts as a key force in human life today. Improving health, for example, has led to rapid population growth and an increasing number of elderly in the population, and both of these changes are having enormous consequences. Each of these supertrends can be analyzed by their component trends when desired, but our purpose here is to get a macroscopic or big picture view of the Great Transformation now shaping our future. Now let's take a look at each of the 6 supertrends. Then we will use them as tools for developing a rough picture of what the world may be like in the year 2040. The 6 super trends. Super trend 1, technological progress. Technological progress includes all the improvements being made in computers, medicine, transportation, and other technologies, as well as all the other useful technologies that enables humans to achieve their purposes more efficiently. We can think of technological progress as the growing capability of humans to achieve their purposes. Technological progress has been the supremely important trend in human evolution for millions of years. When it weakened or even reversed in one area, it flourishes elsewhere, such as in China during Europe's Dark Ages. The power, persistence, and current acceleration of this trend suggest that it will continue, though the 21st century and perhaps much longer. We can speculate that technological progress might come to a halt in the years ahead, but if it were to happen, the most likely explanation would probably be that some massive calamity had occurred. Scientific research continues to prove massive amounts of new knowledge that technologies can exploit. The cybernetic revolution is still racing ahead. Biotechnology promises a 4th technological revolution, and there could be a 5th through nanotechnology or some other area of technology. And so there seems to be more reason to think that progress racing ahead or even faster than to anticipate that it will slow down soon. Super trend 2, economic growth. Technological progress promotes economic growth. Our second super trend because people are eager to use their know-how to produce goods and services, both for their own use and to sell to others. Economic growth is also a self-sustaining process. The accumulation of capital goods, factories, highways, office buildings, railroads, bridges, etc., as well as consumer goods and social capital, institution knowledge, etc., means that each new generation starts with more capital goods and wealth, making it ever easier to produce still more. World economic growth has been prodigious since the the Industrial Revolution, according to economist Angus Madison. In his book, Monitoring the World Economy, 1822 and 1992, Madison reports that world GDP skyrocketed from a mere 695 billion in the early 19th century to nearly 28 trillion in 1992. Growth continues in the 21st century, though the rate of growth is often viewed as unsatisfactory because it remains inadequate for the world's needs, let alone its greeds. Madison reports that the world GDP measured in 1990 US dollars rose from 565 per person in 1500 to 651 per person in 1820, an increase in wealth per person of only 26% per year. By contrast, output per person increased $26 per year from 1820 to 1994, 96 times as much as per year as in the earlier period. If this trend continues, the average person in the developed countries may be wealthy by the standards of today by about the middle of the 21st century. The problem will be that everyone will still know people who are wealthier than they are. Super Trend 3, improving health. Technological progress and economic growth have led to improving human health because they have produced more food, more effective sanitation, better health services, and so on. Improving health leads to an increasing longevity, which has two very important consequences: population growth and a rise in the average age of the population. Population soared in the 1820 to 1992 period from just over 1 billion to nearly 5.5 billion, Madison notes. Today, population is over 6 billion and still climbing. Population is growing because more people are living long enough to produce children, yet birth rates have not declined enough to forestall a rise in the population. In the past, periodic famines, violence, diseases, and other factors controlled population growth. Now population swells largely in poor countries, adding to their poverty. Increasing longevity also means that the average age of the populations is rising. In America, centenarians are the fastest growing age group. In France, a woman named Jeanne Calment reached the age of 122 before dying in 1997. She was the oldest person known to history. The rapid growth of the elderly in the population is now raising numerous issues for society, partially because they tend to be retired and dependent on government assistance programs, thus imposing heavy costs on younger people who are required to pay for their support. To make matters worse, Social Security and pension plans were devised when a relatively few people reached the age of 65, but now more and more people reach the age of 65 and live on, and more people retire at 65 in the industrialized country. The counter trend is that many take on new post-retirement work, either contributing as volunteers or by earning money. More baby boomers could mean more retirees, but not necessarily the total dependencies that's been predicted. Super Trend 4, increasing mobility. Technological progress, economic growth, and population increase combine to cause a fourth supertrend, increasing mobility. Increasing mobility gets less attention from scholars than the first three supertrends, but its importance should not be underrated. People's goods and information move from place to place faster and in greater quantities than ever before. Jet aircraft and superhighways move goods and people at speeds that would have just seemed incredible in the past. Containerization, supertankers, and mechanized port facilities now convey petroleum, automobiles, and other goods around the world at relatively low cost. When speed is important, goods increasingly travel by air. Now, transportation experts are considering the use of pilotless aircraft or drones for commercial purposes. The U.S. military whetted interest in drones by using them to fight terrorists in the Middle East. Meanwhile, people are increasingly traveling for pleasure and education, and some futurists believe that the tourist industry may become the world's biggest industry during the 21st century if terrorism and other violence are controlled. Increasing mobility seems to be principal cause of globalization. The increasing worldwide integration of human activities, regional, national, and transformational organizations and networks are linking governments, business firms, and individuals. Meanwhile, local institutions are often declining due to competitors that offer goods and services unavailable locally at acceptable cost. A single Walmart can make scores of local businesses uncompetitive economically unless they can change their product line. Despite its advantages, mobility also creates many problems. Terrorists and criminals can now more easily move around the world, eluding capture. Diseases now move around the world on jet aircraft. In 2003, air passengers swiftly spread the SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome virus, from China to the countries around the world. Mobility can also cause social and cultural disruption. When people move from one city or country to another, they sever or weaken their ties to their families and communities. A wife, a husband, children may be left behind, sometimes permanently. Mobility encourages a short-term perspective. People may see little point in improving their local community if they expect to move elsewhere. Mobility also weakens social institutions. Churches lose their parishioners. Service groups like the Scouts cannot find volunteers. Local merchants that depend on longtime customers may have to close their doors. Super trend number 5, environmental decline. Environmental decline is continuing for the world as a whole because of continuing high population growth and economic development. Certain nations have made a major efforts to reduce population and other environmental abuse, and these efforts have often been remarkably successful. Pittsburgh is no longer enveloped in factory smoke, and the fish have returned to the river Thames. Nonetheless, Mother Earth remains sick and is still getting sicker. Among the trends making up this much-lamented supertrend are petroleum, a non-renewable natural resource, is being rapidly burned up. Just how long the supplies will last is much debated, but the serious problems may arise as the petroleum stocks dwindle. Freshwater supplies are declining everywhere around the world, and with lakes drying up and the water tables failing, causing wells to run dry. The supply of arable land available for farming is also dropping steadily, even as population increases. Farmers desperate for land are laying waste to large swathes of the rainforest of Brazil and Africa. Overgrazed scrubland is turning into desert. The oceans are already overfished. Fishing in many areas has had to be outlawed to allow the fisheries to recover. Numerous species of animals and plants are becoming extinct even before they can be identified, studied, and evaluated for potential medical benefits. Global warming is melting the polar ice caps, causing the oceans to rise and threatening the coastal areas around the world. Supertrend number 6, increasing deculturation, the loss of traditional culture. Deculturation occurs when the people lose their culture or cannot use it because of the change of circumstances. Due to high mobility, rapid change, economic growth, and other factors, increasing deculturation on the global scale qualifies as a 6th supertrend. We experience deculturation when we go to a country where people speak a language we do not understand or do things differently from what we are used to. In this situation, we have suddenly lost the ability to use the key elements of our culture, our native language, our integrated habits, and our expectations to get the things we need. So we are likely to get a feeling of helplessness, and in fact, we may actually be rather helpless unless we have someone to translate for us. This phenomenon is also called culture shock. Many people today experience culture shock without even having moving to a foreign country. Instead, a new culture takes over much of their homeland, with the result that the original inhabitants become surrounded by people who do not share their culture. Their native language no longer works so well for them because the newcomers do not understand it. In some cases, the newcomers may even force the natives to learn a new language. Today, the world is estimated to have 6,000 languages, but the number is expected to dwindle to about 3,000 by the end of the 21st century due to high mobility, globalization of economic activities, and other factors. Urbanization also contributes to deculturalization. For this to happen on a massive scale in the developing nations, largely because people in rural areas cannot make a living. By moving to cities, people leave behind the social and cultural support systems of their native communities, and they must function in an alien environment where people do not speak or act as they did back home. In such a situation, the newcomers often turn to crime, making cities increasingly dangerous. Travel writer Paul Theroux has described the cancer-like growth of African cities, many of which have become miserably impoverished anthills, attracting the poor and desperate from the bush to turning them into thieves and devisers of cruel scams. He explains that scamming is the survival mode in a city where the tribal niceties do not apply and there are no sanctions except for those of the police. Many cities around the world, including those in the developing nations, have similar problems. Another form of deculturation occurs when your native culture changes rapidly so that your accustomed ways of speaking, behaving, and doing things no longer fit with your environment. Alvin Toffler described this phenomenon as future shock, as made in the title of his 1970 book that sold millions of copies to people who recognized that they were experiencing this phenomenon because of the rapid changes in the world around them. All right, we're going to continue tomorrow. Everyone have a beautiful day. Be well, be blessed. Peace.